3, 2, 1.
What was your faith like before?
My faith in my early adult years was non-existent. I really didn't have a relationship with the Lord. I realized that I wasn't in control. I got on my knees and asked God for peace and grace and felt this incredible presence. I remember going through that whole process where I just had this sense of peace.
Well, we're now in the fourth week of our series that we're calling Rebuilt Faith. Over the course of this series, we're exploring how to strengthen, or if need be, rebuild our faith. As we've been saying, it all begins and ends with the person of Jesus Christ. Our faith is about having a relationship with Him, following Him, and becoming more like Him. And so we've been looking at 5 proven steps that we can take to do that, to become more like Jesus. 2 weeks ago, we looked at the step of serving. We said that Jesus came to this earth to serve and not to be served. And the more we step up into serving, the more we add value to people's lives in our homes and workplaces or schools, our communities and our churches, the more we will become like Christ. Last week, we looked at the step of tithing and giving. Jesus said that wherever your treasure is, there also will your heart be. Our hearts follow wherever our money goes. And so that's why we said that it's important for all of us to give back a generous portion of the financial resources that God has given us out of love for Him and in grateful response to His incredible generosity of giving us His Son. Today I want to share with you a third step you can take to strengthen your faith by engaging in a Christian community. To do that, we're going to need to look at a passage from the Bible that we heard in the first reading today, where God gave the 10 Commandments to a specific group of people, a particular community called the ancient Israelites. The ancient Israelites had been enslaved by the Egyptians for 400 years until God finally raised up a man named Moses to deliver them from slavery. It was a hard sell, and it took a lot of convincing, but finally the Egyptian Pharaoh agreed to allow the Hebrews to leave, at least temporarily. But as soon as they left, he had a complete change of heart, and he sent the entire Egyptian army after them. At one point, they were trapped between the Egyptian army advancing on them from the rear and the Red Sea in front of them. They moved forward, the sea parted, and they were rescued. God led them out into the desert, where He fed them with food called manna, which was like bread raining down from heaven. And He gave them water to drink from a very unlikely place, a rock in the middle of the desert. God proved Himself trustworthy to provide for the basic needs of the Israelites, even in the barren wilderness, in the barren desert. Then He gave them the 10 Commandments. And He gave them the 10 Commandments for 2 reasons. One reason was to give them practical rules that they could live by so they could get along and live together in peace and unity. I think a lot of us, and I know I do this too, we tend to take the 10 Commandments for granted, because they're just so familiar to us today. They just seem obvious, right? I mean, don't kill, don't lie, don't cheat, don't steal, and so on. But you have to understand that back then, this was brand new information for the ancient Israelites. This was brand new information for them. Remember that for thousands of generations, they had been slaves. They didn't have laws of their own because they didn't have freedom. They were forced to live by the rules of their Egyptian taskmasters, a culture that didn't even have basic respect for the value of human life. And so once the Israelites had been liberated from slavery, they needed to know how to live on their own. That's the first reason God gave them the Ten Commandments. The second reason was to teach the Israelites what God valued, what he really cared about. God gave them the commandments so that they would know what was important to God. And what is clear from the Ten Commandments is that God cares about relationships. He cares about his relationship with the people, and he cares about the relationships between the people and among the people. This also was new information. The gods of the other ancient religions at that time placed no value on relationships. They didn't care whether their worshipers loved them or got along or how they treated each other. Morality simply played no part in pagan religions at that time. But the Ten Commandments revealed a God who cared about relationships, who valued his people and valued his relationship with them. The Ten Commandments also revealed a God who cared about how his people treated one another. This was a God who wanted everyone to live in a close, harmonious relationship with both him and with each other. You can see this in the very structure of the Ten Commandments themselves. The Ten Commandments have two parts, really, when you look at them closely. The first part, or the first three commandments, address the relationship between God and the people. God says, I, the Lord, am your God, and you shall have no other gods before me. That's the first commandment. And then he says, you shall not take my name in vain. And then he says, you shall keep the Sabbath holy. These first three commandments are all about building up a relationship with the Lord among a people who didn't really know much about God at that time. You know, every other ancient culture at that time worshipped multiple deities. They worshipped storm gods to grow crops. They worshipped fertility gods to have children. They worshipped the gods of the moon and the sun and the planets to propel the seasons. They worshipped all these gods, but the one true God did not want his people to turn to these false deities for all their various needs. The Hebrew God wanted his people to see him as the one all-sufficient source for everything they needed. He wanted their complete and total trust. And that's what the first part of the Ten Commandments is all about. The second part of the commandments is about the relationship among the people themselves. The second part of the Ten Commandments actually breaks down into two parts themselves. The fourth commandment is about healthy relationships within the family. You know, we learn how to treat other people from our families. And kids, listen up, right? As you grow to learn to honor and respect your parents, as the fourth commandment requires, parents, you're welcome, you learn to honor and respect other people outside the family. And so the second part of the second part, sorry to sound like a lawyer, the second part of the second part, the next 6 commandments are all about healthy relationships outside the family. But the most important thing, I think, to remember about the 10 commandments, other than the commandments themselves, is the fact that God delivered these 10 commandments not to a bunch of individuals who just happened to be gathered at the foot of Mount Sinai when Moses came down with the 2 tablets. He delivered the 10 commandments to a whole nation of people. A nation of people who are just beginning, who are in the process of forming deep and lasting relationships, deep and lasting bonds among each other. God wanted the Israelites to be a nation set apart. That was his plan, to set them apart, to teach the other nations about the 10 commandments and the value that God placed on relationships. In the same way, you and I are not individuals in our faith. We are not individuals in our faith. We are connected and engaged with other followers of Jesus. We're connected and engaged with others who believe and follow Jesus. We grow in our relationship with God, in part through watching other people's relationships with God. I know this for a fact because it happens to me. I say this with all sincerity of heart. Since I've been a priest, over and over again, I marvel at the faith of the people that I serve. I'm not just saying this. This is hand to God. This is true. When I talk to you in confessions, when I listen to you in pastoral counseling, when I interact with you in other settings, over and over again, repeatedly and consistently, I am humbled by the depth of your faith and the strength of your relationship with God, of many people. And I'm affected by it, and I grow from it. Your faith is personal, but it's definitely not private. We all need each other to connect with God in more dynamic and robust ways. It's tempting to say, oh, I don't need a faith community, or I just need to go to Mass. I don't really need all that other stuff in the church. Or as some people say, I don't even need to go to church to pray to God and to be a good person. And that's true. You don't. You don't have to go to church in order to pray and read the Bible and experience God. But here's the thing. Over the long run, faith suffers. Faith suffers and it dwindles and it can even be extinguished like a flame when it's not supported by a faith community. I was talking with a young man a few weeks ago. He's in our starting point group. He's going to be confirmed in the Catholic faith at Easter as an adult. And at the young age of 18, it seems to me he's got a lot of things figured out. In one of our sessions, he said to the whole group that was gathered there, we need the church because it's so easy to be misled by the world out there. That's his words. Easy to be misled by the world out there. He said there's so many viewpoints, so many false opinions, so many weird ideas. He said that engaging in a Christian community will keep us on the straight and narrow, will keep us on the right path. This is from an 18-year-old. Faith simply suffers when it tries to grow on its own, kind of like a fire that struggles to burn without enough oxygen around it. Just as God delivered and saved the whole nation of Israel from slavery, Jesus also saved an entire community. He died for the entire church. At one point in his ministry, he goes to the temple in Jerusalem. This is what we heard in the gospel. And he is appalled by what he sees there. He's upset by what it has become. He sees all the crass commercialism that's going on in the temple. And he decides to make a bold move, a really bold move. He overturns the tables and he drives out the people who were selling stuff there, the money changers who were there to exchange ordinary currency into temple currency for a profit. I've thought about doing that. Do you think you would buy into that? No. And he drove out and he overturned the tables of the merchants who were selling animals for sacrifice. Let's just say Jesus made quite the scene. I mean, money was falling all over the table. He was driving them out with whips and cords. I mean, can you imagine this? And when the authorities in charge of the temple came to him wanting to know what in the Sam Hill he thought he was doing, Jesus had a very strange response. He said this, destroy this temple and in 3 days I will raise it up. What? That's a head scratcher. But then later in the passage it says that Jesus was talking about the body, the temple of his body. Jesus' body is the body of every single human being who loves him and follows him and believes in him. Jesus' body is the church. His body is you, this family of faith gathered here tonight. Jesus wants us all to worship and grow together as his body, as a community, as his church, as a movement of people, all moving in the same direction towards him. This week in the Rebuilt Faith book, which I hope you're reading, if you haven't gotten it yet, you can still get it on Amazon. It's called Rebuilt Faith. Everybody's talking about it in our parish and they love it. It's true. Actually, one of the co-authors was here on campus today. But if you have a chance, pick it up, Rebuilt Faith. This week in that book, the discussion question, the reflection questions are going to focus on the importance of being part of a parish community. We all need a faith community to belong to. We all need a place where we feel like we belong. We hope St. Hilary is that place for you. Our vision statement, our vision is to become a community growing in faith where everyone loves to belong. We want you to love to belong here. But wherever you find that you belong, you should make a commitment to that parish community. We all need to be part of a parish community. Last night after the Mass, after this homily, I was speaking to a parishioner who recently just came to St. Hilary, maybe a few months ago. And she was telling me that when she first moved into the area, she decided that she was going to take 5 months, I don't know why 5, but 5 months to evaluate 5 churches in the area. And after 5 months, she would pick one church and join it. And she was very methodical about it. She said she came up with a list of like 10 different attributes, 10 different qualities of the church, and then she would weight them according to what she thought was the most and least important, like all the way from traffic and parking, up to the homily or the music or whatever she thought was important, the feeling of welcome. And every week she would go to one of these 5 churches and she would come home and she would rank it and she would give it a score on each one of those items. And then at the end of the 5 months, she added up all the total weighted scores and St. Hilary won. We won. Thank you, St. Hilary. You guys are an amazing community. We won the beauty contest. But the reason I'm telling you this is because she shopped for a church with the idea of settling down and joining one. We all shop for different things. We all have our favorite stores. I like Woodlands. I like Nugget. They're both overpriced. But, whatever. We like our clothing stores. We like our favorite malls. And it's okay to shop for a church. But at some point, I really believe you need to settle down and find that one faith community that works for you. And I know for some people it may be hard because there's a problem with trust. Okay, the church may have hurt you in the past or hurt someone you love. Someone in the pews may have been rude or insulting. Some priest may have done something terrible or turned his back on you or ignored you in your need. And by the way, if I've ever offended you, please accept my apologies. I don't mean to, I didn't mean to, but please tell me about it and I will apologize. But I understand the feeling of being, turned off by something that happens in the church and losing trust. It happened to me long ago. I told you about this. My whole life blew up when I was 13 in the church. So I understand it, but as I discovered, isolation is not the solution. Jesus said that the world would know his disciples by the love that they have for each other. They will know we are Christians by our love. And sometimes, a lot of times, it's not easy to love other people, including other people of faith. But that's one way that we actually grow spiritually. It's a remarkable way we grow when we learn to deal with other people's weaknesses and imperfections and show patience and kindness in the face of those. It's a great way to grow in your faith. So we all need to be part of a parish community. We need to be nourished by a local faith community. I realize that for many of you I'm preaching to the choir, but I also know that in every congregation there are people who have been coming here for a while or watching online for a while. And if you haven't yet taken that next step to join this parish or some other parish, I think this may be the opportunity for you to do that, to become a member somewhere and settle down and place yourself in the trust of other people. If you want to do that, talk to me after Mass. I can get you connected. You can go to our website under the Next Steps section. There's a thing called Become a Member. If you're watching online, you can text the word JOIN to the number you see on your screen or scan the QR code on the screen. We will get you connected. We'll get you hooked up. You know, I've found over the years that even people who have been coming for years and years sometimes think they're parishioners, but they never actually took that step. So it may be time to think about whether you've done that and to do it if you can. Followers of Jesus engage with other followers of Jesus. They always have, because faith is all about Jesus, and Jesus is all about love and relationships.